So I'm going to call this meeting at 6:01 p.m. to order of the Bloomington Environmental Commission on June 24th, 2021. We'll go through roll call, starting alphabetically. Sam Armstrong.
Present.
Mattias Banco.
Present.
Matt Caldy.
Here.
Don Eggert. Daniel Gonzalez.
Here.
Myself present. Mike Litwin.
Present.
Dave Parkhurst.
Here.
Corey Ray. Scott Shackelford. Jadamia Whitney.
Here.
Excellent. If anyone arrives while I'm talking or in the next couple of minutes, can you guys just make sure to let me know? We do have a quorum. Moving on our agenda to introductions. We do have a new member this week, so we will be doing introductions. Let's go reverse alphabetical today. So we'll start with Jadamia.
Okay. I forget what we're supposed to say.
Just a little bit, your name, how long you've been on the commission, if you have a day job, or if you did have a day job, what you did, that sort of thing.
Okay. I'm Jadamia Whitney. I've been on the commission, I guess, about 5 months now. It's my second time around. I am a retired English professor from Franklin College. I'm also a member of the Bloomington Tree Commission. And I think that's it.
Thank you, Jadamia. Dave?
Yeah, I'm not muted. Well, I'm retired from the environmental science group at SPIA, and I'm a plant ecologist by training with an undergrad degree in applied math. So, well, that's the kinds of stuff I've done. If I fill out a form these days that asks who's your employer, I put my garden.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dave. Mike?
Mike Litwin. I've been on the commission for over 20 years. Don't know how that happened. And I'm a biologist, fish and wildlife biologist, retired from U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service.
Thank you, Mike. My name's Andrew Gunther. I've been on the commission since 2018. I've served as chair since 2019. Previously, I served on the Monroe County Environmental Commission as well. I am a Master of Environmental Sustainability student at the O'Neill School studying municipal sustainability. My focus specifically is land use and development, and sustainable development specifically. And that's about it for me. So we'll move on to Daniel.
Hello, I'm Daniel, and I'm going to be a second-year Masters of Public Affairs student at Indiana this fall.
Thank you, Daniel. Don, I believe I saw you come in. Are you here?
He's on his iPhone, so I'm not sure.
Okay.
If with us.
If he appears on the screen, we'll come back to him. Matt?
My name is Matt Caldy. I'm a commissioner for 4 years, I think 4 years this month. Just an environmentally concerned citizen that's happy to be on the commission.
Thank you, Matt. We'll do Sam, and then we'll do our new member. Sam?
Hi, my name is Sam Armstrong. I was appointed to the commission earlier this year. I am a student at IU. I'm taking my time as an undergrad as a environmental and sustainability student. And I also just declared my certificate for GIS. And I also am involved with environmental restoration work on the side.
Thank you, Sam. Don, I think I saw you pop up. Do you want to introduce yourself to our new member?
Okay, I'm Don Eggert. I'm a retired geologist. Been on the commission for this will be my 3rd year, and I'm involved with MC Iris and city parks with invasive plants, and basically I try to track international media in support of the concerned scientists.
Thank you, Don. Matthias, if you want to introduce yourself now.
Hi, everyone. My name is Matthias Benko. I'm originally from Indianapolis, but I'm a rising junior at IU Bloomington now, and I'm majoring in environmental and sustainability studies and geography. And this summer, I'm actually working on a project that's compiling Indiana's municipal vegetation codes and ordinances. So yeah, that's me.
Oh, and thank you. It's you said Matthias?
Matthias.
Matthias, perfect. Excellent. Thank you so much. I'll try to remember that in the future. Linda and Ben, do you want to introduce yourself as well as valuable members of the Environmental Commission staff, so to speak?
Yeah, I'm Linda Thompson. I'm the senior environmental planner for the city and the liaison to the Environmental Commission. And I wear many, many different hats. But basically, that's my main gig here for you all.
My name is Ben Sheriff, and I'm the SPIA intern for the Environmental Commission. I'm a dual master's student in public affairs and environmental science, and I'm a returned Peace Corps volunteer.
Oh, really? Where'd you go into the Peace Corps?
Malawi.
Thank you so much, everyone. Seeing as we're done with introductions, we'll move on to the minutes. I hope everyone had a chance to look at the minutes that Ben sent out from May. Are there any amendments or changes to the minutes to be offered? I'm going to scroll through. I'm seeing a lot of shaking of heads. Seeing none, I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
Okay. Did someone make a motion? I didn't see.
I will.
Here. Okay. And Don seconds. Wonderful. Moving down the list, Sam.
Yay.
Cool. Yay. Matthias, sorry.
Matthias, right.
Yay.
Matt,
Yes.
Don,
Aye.
Daniel,
Yes.
I vote yes. Mike,
Yes.
Dave, if you said something, you are muted.
Actually, I raised my thumb up there.
Oh, I'm sorry. I did not. I was looking at my roll call sheet.
There you go.
Didamia.
Aye.
Wonderful. Minutes are approved unanimously. Moving on in our agenda, we'll move on to public comment. If any member of the public wishes to speak this evening, they may raise their hand using the chat function or message our host in Zoom. You have a limit of 5 minutes per person, 20 minutes total for public comment this evening. If there are any members of the public who wish to comment, let it be known now. Any messages anyone sees, Linda or Ben? All right. Seeing no public comment, I will now close the public comment period. Moving on to our reports from various commissions, we'll start with Tree Commission.
Okay. Didamia is also on the Tree Commission, and she always writes up wonderful minutes for us. I think I may have sent those to y'all, but we had a fairly short meeting. Aaron Hatch, who's a former member of this group and is now the city forester, gave a, this time, pretty brief monthly report of the city forester. And then she talked about how we're trying to come up with at least suggestions, if not rules, for protection of trees during construction. So we talked about that for a little while. In the Urban Forester's report, she gave us a few comments about cicada damage to various, particularly smaller trees. We had a report about trees at IU from Mia Williams, yes. And then the question of what's happening with Bachelor Forest when the new library branch is going up down by the Bachelor Middle School. And it turns out that this coming Sunday on the 27th, the Friends of the Library is holding their annual meeting, and the new branch will be discussed to them, and whether they'll mention anything about preserving the forest down there, I don't know. And then right toward the end, Aaron mentioned some new rules for meetings that I guess comes out of the state, and I think that Linda has those on them on our menu for today. So that's that meeting.
Thank you, Dave. Any questions for Dave on the Tree Commission report? Seeing none, we'll move on to the Monroe County Environmental Commission. The Monroe County Environmental Commission met earlier this month. They discussed the House Enrolled Act 1437, which is the law regarding the new meeting policy for hybrid meetings, and the resolution regarding such for the County Environmental Commission. They received an update from Maggie Sullivan on the Lake Monroe Watershed Management update regarding that process. And then Andrea Webster from the Environmental Resilience Institute discussed Monroe County's 2022 resilience cohort participation. And the County Council Representative Peter Iverson from District 1 gave an update on county progress on sustainability issues, including retrofitting county buildings with more sustainable like lights and that sort of thing. So there was a lot of updates, no new business. Are there any questions for me on the Monroe County Environmental Commission report? Seeing none, we'll move along to the Bloomington Commission on Sustainability.
Okay, we're trying to go through this quickly. Much of it was covered in the both previous comments about the new state requirements about meetings, and Linda has that in more detail. So anyhow, Alex Carleyfield was filling in for Lauren, and both he and Matt Flattery spoke pretty much at length about the state changes in meetings. But as far as the significant content, Alex was talking about the energy audit, solar energy audit, and how that was going well, and that they're working, I guess, with 10 nonprofits, and they hope to be able to expand this in July to some residential support. He discussed quite extensively the American Rescue Plan and the amount of money, that $22 million. A lot of that was covered in the HT, so I don't need to go into any detail of that. Also, the fact about the old hospital. One of his observations was that now that the city, it's the city's coming up to becoming the city's property, will make the solution of what to do at the site easier. I guess there was a discussion on the also again covered in the paper about the city becoming partners in that Friends of Lake Monroe commission, rather, I should say. Matt went on about the federal COVID recovery funds to address housing and COVID, using those recovery funds, and hopefully we'll get back to some of the mayor's Build Back Better will be utilized. And also then when they got to the regular meeting, the discussion was primarily about the the housing equity efforts that they're involved in. And apparently they are going to be trying to contact either one or more of the authors of what's called the Cleveland Plan, which they're looking at as kind of something, a program to perhaps repeat here in Bloomington. The other last sort of thing on business was the 1,000 household pledge as far as composting leaves, and the discussion basically from both Matt and Alex was that if this works well, the city may discontinue the curbside pickup of leaves, which apparently, well, actually costs a lot of money and contributes to greenhouse gases with all the heavy equipment that has to be entailed. Other than that, the only thing that was on the agenda was a question about the lake, Twin Lakes former dam project, whether we had, and I was asked about that and explained I would get back with, I would contact Linda to find out how the commission handled that when it was before. And Linda basically stated that a large amount of the concern of the commission was the cost. And I guess that when they realized what was the situation, the commission did not have, or our commission did not have any objections, significant objections to it. If anybody else has any other memory of that, please let me know.
Thank you, Don. Does anyone have any questions for Don on the Commission on Sustainability report?
I just want to say I posted the mulching and composting challenge that Don was just talking about on the Facebook page. So if anyone wants more information on that, they can obviously go to the city page or the Facebook page too.
Thank you, Ben. Any further comments or questions for Don? Thank you, Don. Seeing none, we'll move on to our next commission, which is ERAC. Did ERAC have a meeting this month?
Not this month, no.
All right.
Oh, wait, hang on, we did. And I just discovered that you can temporarily unmute by holding down the space bar. So that's what I'm doing. I guess you can hear me.
Yep.
Yeah, in our meeting on June 9th, we talked first about algal blooms at Meadowwood and Meadowwood Pond and Griffey Lake. Then talked about the Cascades Park, the stream stabilization work, and a trail work is going to happen after July 4th, I guess they said. And I just heard on the radio today that the road, they've decided not to keep the road through Cascades closed all the time. They're going to open it up and maybe put in some speed bumps and such. The Griffey Loop Trail and the fishing pier that are to be built there will go out to bid soon. As we always talk about education possibilities, and the county shelters are now open. Some parks programs are now open. The Bird Fest and the Bug Fest that are held every year will probably be live. We talked next about pollinator habitats and native plantings. Joanna Sparks from the Parks Department talked about a lot of planting that has gone on around the city. And so I'm hoping we can get her at one of our biodiversity meetings, because she's talking about things that will help to make our donut-shaped biodiversity spaces. We talked about Leonard Springs, which is a city park that's out in the county, because we used to have a water supply out there a long time ago. And they are building a nature park shelter and that's progressing. It's in the area where there's a picnic area at the moment. We talked about trail signs and boot brushes, and boot brushes will be installed at all the natural trails. And the purpose of those is to keep you from carrying weeds from wherever you've been last into these natural areas. And I commented as how my wife's farm down in Kentucky and my garden keep transferring weeds back and forth between the two, and it would be good if we had boot brushes. And the trail signs are going to be made up by MC Iris. They talked about the first Saturday weed wrangles that Don could probably tell us more about, but these are going out to various places and digging up invasive plants. So that was the ERAC meeting on June 9th.
Thank you, Dave. Any questions for Dave on the Environmental Resources Advisory Council report?
Could I point out that this morning at Cascades Park, the park staff confirmed with what was just said at the ERAC meeting and about the speed bumps. So also apparently the road was further damaged by last Friday and Saturday morning's flooding. So and also quite a bit of tree damage apparently in the park as well.
Thank you, Don. Any further comments or questions for Dave? Dave, if you could just email me the contact information again for the individual you want to speak at the biodiversity working group, I'll get in contact with them and arrange that. Perfect. Moving on to the Metropolitan Planning Organization Citizens Advisory Committee. They've mainly discussed the 2022 to 2026 Transportation Improvement Program. They mainly discussed the various processes, funding that they're going to have to use, et cetera. There's going to be a public comment period available at some point, which I will keep you all up to date on. And I will try and pass along critical details of that program as it goes through. That was the only thing on their agenda, except I did get an update from staff on the Indiana Department of Transportation infrastructure target updates for our area, mainly repairs and construction on things like highways, things that NDOT is responsible for. Are there any comments or questions on the MPO Citizens Advisory Committee report? Seeing none, we'll move along to Friends of Lake Monroe. Is there a report from Friends of Lake Monroe?
Okay.
You are muted, Dave.
Trying to hold down my space bar, but it didn't work that time. Friends of Lake Monroe hasn't met just recently. I've been working a lot with them of plotting graphs of their data. At our last meeting, we learned that the research part of the program is pretty much done, and we're now trying to figure out, now that we know what the problems are, what to do to manage them. And I forget names all the time. We had at our last meeting, we were asked to support Friends of Lake Monroe in getting a new grant to work on management, and let's hope that that happens. I don't know when we will know about that, but that's where things stand with Friends of Lake Monroe.
Thank you. Any questions or comments for the Friends of Lake Monroe report? I want to add that I did send along our letter of support to both the office of the mayor and to all the city council members. I did receive a response from Councilmember Isabel Piedmont Smith. She asked what the actual what funds they were proposing, what budgetary funds that we were proposing they appropriate to Friends of Lake Monroe. I directed them back to Friends of Lake Monroe, who said that they are working with the administration to craft a proposal to give to City Council. So I do believe that process is still ongoing. Moving on to MC Iris, is there an MC Iris report?
I'll send the just send the meeting notes that Ellen sent. I meant to do that earlier today, and I didn't get to it. But in general, things are moving along, particularly with the. Am I muted?
Nope, we can hear you.
Particularly with the expansion of the weed wrangles. They've added parks, which is also working with neighborhoods. And also one of the things as far as the specific park that I've been largely involved with Ellen, or I should say rather Jillian and park staff has been Southeast Park, and apparently Jillian has arranged to get some students in various, I think 4 students participating this fall in a number of different areas, including outreach. So that, and this morning we had an informal discussion about what should be next year's targeted plan. So probably get at least the minority of members that were present, meaning 3 of us. The privet was probably particularly the fact we were dealing with a bunch of privet today at Cascades. But we'll see what happens as the topic comes up in future meetings.
Thank you, Don. Any questions for Don on the MC Iris report?
I don't have a question, but I wanted to add that there was a request from MC Iris that we help promote their Reduce One Invasive Species program, which is focusing on purple winter creeper this year. I've spoken to Ben, and he's had it on the Facebook page before, and we'll look into doing it again, but I don't know if there are any other avenues that we could use to help them out. I just said I'd pass it along.
Also, as far as with MC Iris, and apparently one of the things is we're looking at a discussion that's sort of going not just at the meeting, but also between members, is having working with HAND to provide some grant funds to help neighborhood associations or neighborhood groups tackle invasives, to get some, and as well as helping those that would like to get it removed from their property, but because of their age or physical ability, they can't do it themselves.
Thank you, Don. One thing that comes to mind, Matt, is that we could, it may be too short of a topic for a guest column, but perhaps a letter to the editor, to the HT regarding, we could just outline what purple winter creeper is, why it's bad for our native environment, and then segue into NMC Iris is promoting removal, find out more information here. That sort of thing I think would be relatively easy for us to do, as well as obviously our Facebook page. And if we could do, we can mention it as well in the events that we do hold in the future. It would just be a matter of what events we hold and when.
I could this evening I could pass that on to Ellen Jacquard and to Jillian, because we really are looking for more partners, expanding the partnership with the city department and particularly with our own sustainability project as far as the biodiversity.
Wonderful. Yes, and I think we're always open to partnerships with community organizations that share goals with us as well. I see Sam's hand is raised.
Yeah, Dawn, if I may ask you a question, if we have the time, you mentioned that you guys are working on a grant or some type of funding with hand or hands. Is this a new grant that you guys are talking about than what we have currently in Bloomington with hand already?
It's sort of it's basically a continuation of what had been done with Asian bush honeysuckle. So it's kind of an ongoing thing between hand and MC Iris that's been supported in the past. And so that's the best way I could sum it up.
Okay. Sure.
Can I add something there, Sam? It's not the same grant as the stormwater utility grants.
No. Yeah,
this is totally separate.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's also an invasive removal small grant also.
Say it again.
There's also an invasive removal small grant that is separate from the stormwater grant.
What if
Do you know what to? Do you know? Oh, I'm sorry, Dave. Don.
I was just wondering out loud whether they're in parallel with each other and jointly, because knowing Christy Lindbergh, and there's a lot of communication going on between departments as well as with MC Iris. It wouldn't surprise me, I guess.
Sam, do you know what department of the city that small grant program is under?
I'm putting it into the chat right now.
I think they're the same grants.
It's Bloomington Neighborhoods Grants, small and simple.
That's the hand grant that Don was talking about.
For
yes,
neighborhood specifically.
I was just making sure that was the same one versus an additional one that they're proposing.
Right. No, it's the same.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the city allows neighborhood associations to form, and one of the benefits for being a neighborhood association registered with the city is that you can apply for grants designated for neighborhood associations, and that happens to be one of them. So, yeah, it's a good program. I'm not sure how well it's utilized, but it's definitely something we can try to advocate more people to use in the future, especially when we're contacting neighborhoods involved with the habitat connectivity plan. We can definitely advocate at the same time we're talking to them. Hey, if you want to improve your natural habitat in your neighborhood, you can also remove invasive species using this grant that's available to your association.
Yes, Sam brought that up at our last habitat connectivity meeting.
Perfect.
And one of the things with this year's designated with winter creeper is that MC Iris is setting up a replacement planting event in September, akin to what they did last year for people that documented that they had removed Asian bush honeysuckle. So they are trying to figure out a way to, MC Iris is also trying to work out a way to come up with a funding source themselves to help support that type of effort of buying exchange materials and say native seeds and plant starts so that people can plant more native species.
Perfect. Any further questions or comments for Don on the MC Iris report?
Well, a comment on the winter creeper. Ellen Jackhart was in our backyard trying to figure out whether it was a good place for some research project they were planning, and it turned out not to be, but she noticed on a neighbor's tree a bunch of winter creeper climbing up the trees. And so I went over and I cut those vines, but I didn't try to dig up what was on the ground. And the point is that it has to climb the trees to flower, and it spreads by flowering to places where it wasn't before. Of course, on the ground, it just spreads by the vines, but I didn't try to get the vines up, and I did take it off his trees. So if you want to do just a little bit with winter creeper, keep it off the trees.
Can I add to that is that this is really important, because as an example, I've been fighting winter creeper in my own yard since we moved here in the early 80s. And yesterday when I was weeding my flower garden, I found a seedling winter creeper. And I jokingly pointed out to Jillian this morning that obviously a bird had pooped over my yard and garden. And I have a baby winter creeper via that. But one of the things that we, MC Iris and the City Parks Department have been doing is when you find a climbing honeysuckle or English ivy, you cutting it and also treating the cut part that goes to the roots with a herbicide. It's a daunting task. This week, working in Southeast Park, I encountered some climbing honeysuckle. And because I'm not a park employee, all I could do was cut it and pass on the word where I found it, so that they can come back and treat the significant vine stump.
Thank you. Any further questions for Don on the MCIRS report?
If I could just add one more comment. I don't actively work in the environmental restoration field anymore, but I have previously held 2 jobs in that field, and basically all we did was removing invasive plant species, especially purple winter creeper. A lot of it is really tough work, and in some cases it's pretty unrealistic for just a property owner to be able to eradicate it on mass scales, especially if they have a larger lot or a lot that's really like heavily invaded. And sometimes you need someone who has, proficiency with herbicide application to be able to really have an effective edge at combating some of these invasives on a large scale. So I just wanted to advocate for maybe eventually there being some funding for like small firms through Bloomington, or for grants to go to homeowners to be able to contract groups to be able to have a more systematic edge against the invasive plants.
Mm-hmm. I think one of the realities is that basically you're not going to be able to eliminate invasive plants. It's more an issue of controlling and limiting.
Preserving certain areas.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Any further questions on the MCIRS report? Wonderful. Good discussion, guys. We'll move on then to our discussion. Oop, did I miss someone? I heard someone speaking up. All right. Discussion for our active working groups. We'll move on to ECPC/Plan Commission. Linda, if you want to give us an update on what looks like the district at Latimer Square.
Yes, we've discussed this one before. They were continued last month. The reason for that was because they were working with the utilities on a memorandum of understanding regarding utilities, and they also have been making some changes in their architecture. But just to give a little background for the new people on here, this is a site almost 12 acres on the east side, on East 3rd Street, where the old Kmart building was, which some of you may not even know that. It's in a mixed-use corridor district, and the plan is to demolish the old Kmart building and parking lot and build new apartment buildings. And it'll be mixed use because Blooming Foods is there, and Blooming Foods building will stay there. And in addition to Blooming Foods, there'll be 5 residential buildings. And let's see here, 340 units, 906 bedrooms. But they have some, a few green building plans. The big one, the one that's worth mentioning is they plan a cool roof, a high albedo cool roof. And I didn't mention that last time because I didn't realize it. And another thing that they've changed since last time we talked about this was that at all 5 buildings, they are going to have pollinator gardens. And they will be planting those with a meadow butterfly seed mix. But those are going to be dotted all over the site. And so that's kind of, since we're running kind of behind, that's the only case that's going to be on the July Plan Commission agenda. So I'm going to call it quits there so we can move on with our agenda.
Perfect. Any questions?
Dave?
Yeah, just a comment. This is called Latimer Square, I think you said.
The district at Latimer Square. Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, it's right north of Latimer Woods, which is a small city park. And it's land that once belonged to a Covenanter family in Bloomington, the Latimers. And their descendants now own all that land. They don't sell it, they lease it, and they own the land that College Mall is on as well. So they probably get a lot of good income from leasing the land. Blooming Foods leases part of that land too. So good for them.
I had a question, Linda, regarding parking.
Yes.
So first of all, for my question, is this being built as a student complex or as a multifamily residential?
Both.
Both?
Yes. There will be a couple of buildings that will be more oriented towards students, and others that are more typical apartments.
Okay. Do you know how many parking spaces they're proposing?
I'm sorry?
Do you know how many parking spaces that they're going to be on the lot?
Yes, I do. Bedrooms, I think. 542 spaces with 22 electric vehicle charging stations. And there will be 182 bicycle parking spaces.
182 bicycle spaces. And how many bedrooms did you say they have again?
How many what?
Bedrooms?
906.
Okay. So a little over, that's almost a sixth of a space per bedroom. Okay. Thank you, Linda. I was just curious as to the ratio.
You're welcome.
Linda, is there any provision for permeable surfaces on any of the parking lots?
The parking will be primarily in a garage.
Oh, okay.
Blooming Foods parking lot will remain, except there's going to be, it will be planted. But the primary parking is in a garage. But I don't think there's any, as far as I know, there's no permeable pavement anywhere.
In the shadow of the flooding this past week, how confident do we feel in the drainage on the site?
I'm sorry, you're hard for me to hear, Andrew.
I'm sorry, can you hear me better now?
Yeah.
How do we feel about the drainage on the site in relation to flooding?
I couldn't comment on that yet because it's kind of early in the process, and I haven't really. I'll look at the grading plan, but it's not actually my main purview for reviewing it. But there will be, I do know that there's going to be a number of rain gardens and bioswales.
Okay, good.
Good.
Any further questions for Linda?
Andrew, for some reason, your voice is getting hard to understand compared to what it was at the start of the meeting. I don't know why that is.
I can hear him pretty good. I've heard him the same. I don't know if other people have too, and it's just my headphones or something. But
It dropped for me as well.
Can you guys hear me better now?
Absolutely.
Yes.
I don't know what was going on, but my Bluetooth was messing up. Did I miss anything while I was fixing my settings?
I don't think so. It just sounded like you were getting deeper into a cave. But now you're right out at the entrance again.
That's basically where I live in now, Linda. I have holes in my walls. I have concrete flooring. It's a wonderful place where I live right now. Damp, very nice.
Watch out for the bats.
Yeah. Yeah. Moving on then to the outreach working group update. Ben, since Corey's not here, did you want to take the lead on this one?
yeah, that sounds good. I don't know. I was going to switch up the order so we can just keep the outreach stuff all together, if that's all right.
That's fine.
I'll start with the biodiversity. So this Sunday, we're having a biodiversity group meeting with all our partners that we've invited. So we invited about 17 different people or groups to come to this meeting to help advertise the habitat connectivity plan to certain neighborhood associations in July and August. So this Sunday at 7, we're going to talk to them and see if they have any questions about the habitat connectivity plan. And then we're going to try to vote on a day that we'll all go out together and hand out the brochures and the pledges and try to make as many people as possible aware of the habitat connectivity plan and maybe put some flyers around town as well, and see if anyone is willing to go to some community events as well and discuss the habitat connectivity plan with the public. So that's kind of what's been going on with the biodiversity working group. I think we met almost maybe 3 weeks ago, and we talked a little bit about the phase after that as well, after we advertised the habitat connectivity plan and about how we're gonna help different people start planting natives, and especially if they're older and they need help doing that. And me, Sam, and Don also discussed maybe getting a group together to volunteer to go to people's homes and help them plant native species in their yards and things like that. So yeah, so that's kind of what's going on with the biodiversity working group. If anyone wants to make it this Sunday, I'll send out the Zoom link to everyone. I think I've already sent it to the working group, but I'll also send it to just the entire EC as well if people want to attend. The more the merrier, I think. And then
Can I ask a question of Linda? Linda.
I'm sorry, you ducked back in the cave.
I'm back in the cave. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm sorry. I don't know what's going on with my sound today. Are we, for like the biodiversity working group meeting on Sunday, are we bound by the rule that we can't have more than a majority of our members there? or else we have to post it as a posted meeting?
Yes, the working group doesn't usually have that, though.
Okay, well, I was just letting us, so we have to be aware when we invite everyone to the working group meetings that we can't have more than, I believe at this point, 5 commission members present. So, well,
I think we
There's
have
a
5.
maximum? That doesn't make sense that there's a maximum. I don't understand.
So the law, the open door law in Indiana states that if a majority or a quorum of a body meets, you have to post that meeting as an official meeting for the public with 48 hours notice.
Yeah.
So if we have a meeting and more than 5 people show up, some members will have to leave because I don't want to be charged with violating that rule, because that's a very important one. And
Or
can
if
get
we
in a
just
lot of
post
trouble
it
for
as an open meeting, could we do that?
Say it again?
Well, didn't you say unless we give 48 hours notice, we still are within that time frame?
I don't think the weekend counts.
Correct. Non-business days
Business
don't.
days, okay.
In the future, we can do that. It's just I always err on the side of not giving Linda more work because she does so much for us already. If that's something we need to do in the future, though, we can explore that with Linda as.
Right. I'm happy to do it. I just didn't realize everybody was invited.
I was just trying to get the excitement up and try to invite everyone.
Okay.
So, but yeah, I think it's just going to be the working group that's coming. It looks like now, so that's fine.
Okay. Didn't mean to rain on your parade, Ben.
So yeah, if anyone has any questions about the biodiversity working group, Damia.
I don't have a question about that, but I have to leave. I have another commitment at 7 and I have to have time to log on to that. So I was going to write out my thoughts and objections to the parking proposal, but we had an emergency here, which has consumed all of our time for the last 2 days. So I will try to do that between now and the next meeting. So at any rate, carry on, guys.
Thank you, Damien. Have a great rest of your evening.
All right.
Bye to Damien.
So I guess we'll move on to the outreach group meetings or update. So the last meeting we discussed a specific date that we want to hold our panel discussion. And what we kind of narrowed it down to was the first 4 weeks of, or first 4 Saturdays of September is what we're all looking at. So not including the last one. So we were thinking about voting on that here, or at least bringing it up to everyone. I'm not sure if we want to do that now or if we want to send out a poll again. And then we also wanted to see what everyone thought about venues, including Switchyard Park. We thought about trying to reserve, and then also City Hall for one of those weeks. So that's kind of what do you guys think about doing that? I'm not sure if we have enough time tonight. If we want to send out like a doodle poll, like what Andrew's been doing, we can do that as well, what people prefer of the venue and the date. That sound good?
Yeah. Did you say the first 4 Saturdays in September?
Yeah, one of those first 4 Saturdays.
Okay, there's only 4 Saturdays in September. So.
Oh, I'm sorry. All right, I must have miscounted in my head.
Okay, no, I'm just making sure that you didn't mean like October or something.
No, yeah.
Okay.
Starting the 4th of September and then every Saturday, I guess, after that, we discussed.
I guess one thing comes to my mind that we didn't mention in the meeting about the Saturdays. What will IU home football games add to the issues that might come up with selecting a date?
Possibly. Possibly. We also, there's a lot of things going on in September. The Lotus Fair and the 4th Street Fair and the Bug Fest and the Bird Fest and Eco Heroes. Yeah, and I guess football games.
I guess what we were talking about during the meeting was that people thought that everyone wouldn't be in town before then. So that's why people voted to do it in September. I don't know if people have had a change of heart.
Something to think of.
Well, it sounds to me like we need to kind of write out a calendar of what all's going on each weekend and make a decision from there.
Yeah, that sounds good. I can do that tomorrow. I'll write out a calendar and I'll let everyone know what's going on those days.
Okay.
Now, are you talking about a meeting of the outreach group or of everybody? I missed something.
No, I'm talking about the panel discussion that we're trying to put together of just 4 educated people that want to talk about the environment and what I guess we decided on a topic of what we hope Bloomington will look like environmentally on a residential scale in the next like 20 years or 50 years or something like that. We haven't completely narrowed down the topic yet, but that's what we're discussing right now. Sorry if I didn't mention that.
And it'll be a public event.
Yeah. And then also, Didemia also mentioned making it or serving beer there, I guess. But then there was also, we wanted to talk to you, Linda, about that because I guess if we got a private vendor to do that, I guess that's legal, but that's what Didemia was saying. I should maybe let her talk about this.
Yeah, well, serving beer is a great idea, but that can't be done in the parks. And in all honesty, I don't know. I'd have to check into that to find out all the details on that.
Yeah. And then also we talked about advertisement briefly. And I know me and Linda have been talking about it recently, but if we want to put any advertisements about the panel discussion or about Eco Heroes, I sent Linda the costs for Bloom Magazine and also the HT, but it's going to be for the HT, I think it was somewhere around $400 something, and Bloom Magazine was around like $700 for the cheapest one.
Did you inquire about reduced rates for public interest groups?
No, I didn't realize we could do that, but I'll send, I have both their emails, the advertisement people, so I can email them tomorrow and see if they're willing to do that.
Yeah, I'm not sure if they would, but I can't imagine, for example, that they would charge certain nonprofits in town that price. So I would imagine that they might have a system in place for giving discounts to certain groups that aren't necessarily as well funded.
We are not a nonprofit.
No, we're not a nonprofit, but I mean, we're a group that doesn't operate for a profit and we don't have recurring funds. And we're a public interest group in that we serve the community. So it's the worst thing they can do is say no. It never hurts to ask for a discount.
Yeah, that sounds good. I've been emailing them back and forth, and they know that we're the environmental commission that like this advertisement is for. So they didn't go out of their way to say that it is, but maybe we just need to ask.
Gotcha. Yeah, I would just ask politely, and if they say no, we'll just move on from there. But they could say yes, so that's always an option.
And Sam?
I think we also talked about maybe paying for a Facebook boost also if we wanted to announce it on Facebook. And then we're also talking in our meeting the caveat about scheduling the venues for that panel discussion is the sooner we're able to vote on that is the sooner we can look at the availability for those places, which could be filling up pretty quickly.
Yeah, and also I haven't been able to get in touch with Corey over the past week or so, but last Friday was the due date that we were supposed to all turn in who we wanted or who we were considering as a panel discussion person. And I still don't have that list. So hopefully Corey has that and he can send it to me soon and I can try to reach out to them as soon as possible.
I also don't have that list, but I did hear from from Corey that he's got kind of a minor family emergency going on, and he apologizes for missing. He plans to email the group, so I'm guessing those types of details will be in the group. He's just away and waiting till he can get back to his desktop. The only other thing I remember us talking about that we haven't at least touched on was at either or both the Eco Heroes or forum events, we talked about if groups wanted to table there, if that was something we could do, whether it was outdoors at the park or whether it was in the hallway there at City Hall, depending on what venue we arrived at. But we could have any, whether it's Friends of Lake Monroe or MC Iris or anyone else who's environmentally related, table at the event, so it'd be increased exposure for them.
Well, I'll have to check in on that for the Eco Heroes because that's already set in place, being at City Hall. There's rules about that kind of stuff at the farmers market. So we'll have to have further discussions about that.
Mm.
Okay. Any further questions for Ben or comments on the outreach working group update? Okay. So that brings us then to old business, which is a discussion on the outreach working group. The outreach working group has stalled a little bit because, as we know, Corey's had a family emergency and we haven't met too recently. But I wanted to take an opportunity to encourage everyone on the commission, even if you're not directly involved in the outreach working group, to give them a hand by responding to when they ask for ideas or input. Especially, for example, as we discussed earlier, we are trying to arrange a panel of speakers. So we're trying to get as many people as we can to give as many options as we can have available of people to a pool of people to pick from for that panel. I didn't see very many people respond to that request. I didn't hear of many people responding to that request. And I know all of us know of many people in the community or at IU or in the state who are environmentally focused just based on, when you apply, we get your resume. We know you all are very well educated, well involved people. I can't imagine that we all don't know 2 or 3 or 4 people that may be able to speak at an event like that. So that's just the type of thing that I want everyone to get more involved in as we move forward, because the outreach working group, it can only consist of a maximum of 5 or 6 people. We need to make sure that we're giving them as much support as we can, even if we're not directly involved in the working group. And that will also apply to when we actually hold the events in person as well. We may be asking you to all volunteer an hour or 2 of your time on a Saturday or Friday afternoon or evening to come in and work an event. And I expect as many of you that are able to and willing to show up for those types of things in the future, because it's critical for us getting this getting these events off the ground, getting them run right, and establishing a good reputation as an organization that holds events in Bloomington. We want to make sure they work and they work well. Linda, do you have anything to add to this conversation?
No, we just need to do everything sooner rather than later.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. We're hitting the summer wall. Everyone hits about the 4th of July and things start to slow down. I understand that completely. But we are trying to plan events for August, September, that's that time frame. And we can't let any time go by without some progress being made. So I will be encouraging people to do that as much as possible. I'll be trying to do that myself as much as I possibly can. I just ask that everyone, if you have the time, give the time. If you don't have the time to be on the working group, but we ask for recommendation, take 20 minutes to think and write an email. It really does help us tremendously, no matter how much time you're able to give. Any further comments or discussion on this?
I just want to say that like around mid-July, I'm going to be going around putting out flyers around Bloomington for Eco Heroes. So if anyone wants to join in on that and help me out, please give me an email and we can go out and do that.
Anything else? Okay. Seeing none, we'll move along then to new business. The first item of new business is a discussion on parking minimums. Ben, I was wondering if I could share my screen, if you could give me that permission. So like I said earlier in my introduction about myself, I'm a Master of Environmental Sustainability student, and that one of my focuses is land use and development. For the past several years, I've been reading up on development in regards to parking, specifically in regards to parking minimums. And it's culminated in me proposing the resolution I sent to you all to a handful of commissions in Bloomington with the idea of getting the city council to work alongside us in implementing a policy change that would benefit the environment, benefit traffic, benefit pedestrian safety, and aid development decisions in Bloomington. So I have yeah, Ben?
Sorry, I think Linda is the only one that can do that right now. Could you possibly click on his top right and it should say that he can share the screen.
Would that be making him a host, Ben?
Yeah, making him the host. Yep.
I won't do anything evil in Linda, I promise.
See if that works.
Wonderful. Let me see if I can share my screen. Share screen. Desktop. Can you see my desktop? Wonderful. Okay.
Yes.
Perfect. So let's do a presentation real fast. I was hoping Damien would be here for this, but unfortunately she had to go. This is, I had fun with the title, One Simple Trick, How Bloomington Can Reduce Traffic, Support Climate Action, Make Housing More Affordable, and Reduce Urban Sprawl All at Once. And the answer is parking reform. Parking reform is critical on urban planning policy, on everything from housing to economic development to environmental planning. If you think about parking and the actual requirements it has, land and space, money, street connections, you can see some of the impacts that parking has on all these facets of our community. More land for parking equals less land for things such as housing or commercial development or green space, for example. Where we park can almost be as important as how we get from place to place. Of course, it matters a great deal whether you drive or walk or bike. However, where we park impacts the likelihood of people doing all three of those things. Smart street and parking planning contributes directly to decisions people make of how they get from place to place. And today we'll be focusing on parking minimums in Bloomington and other municipalities, specifically on the idea of eliminating or reducing parking minimums for new residential developments. So what are parking minimums? They are relatively self-explanatory. They're the minimum number of parking spaces required for new developments. They usually are mandated as a number of parking spaces, whole or partial, required per dwelling unit or bedroom. So this is table 04-9, minimum vehicle parking requirements from the Bloomington UDO. Note where we already do not have requirements. So single family homes, for example, some duplexes, triplexes, and quadplexes. Dwelling, live, work. That's where you live above your office, for example, in the downtown area. And some small student housing or dormitory buildings have no requirement for parking as well. So not having parking requirements isn't necessarily a foreign concept in Bloomington. But for example, a student housing complex of 200 bedrooms would be required under the UDO to have at least 100 parking spaces. And that's regardless of their relation to public transit, how close they are to campus or downtown or other major hubs. There is a way for developers to request a variance from planning staff to have fewer parking spaces than is required by the UDO. But since that has been implemented, according to planning staff, only one developer has taken that option. And I believe that's from the by right versus conditional use phenomenon. People are more likely to do something when it's automatically allowed and does not require extra work or permissions. So part of the goal of eliminating parking minimums is you eliminate that extra work barrier, and it allows developers to actually make the determination of how many parking spaces they actually need. So where has this been done? Here we can see a crowdsourced data map from strongtowns.org. They do advocacy work on things like parking and city planning across the United States. Here they've collected data and visualized it on a map. The green pins are where parking minimums are completely eliminated in at least one area of the city. Blue pins are where parking minimums are lowered or removed for certain uses. And orange pins are where they're currently discussing their parking minimum laws. So this is a crowdsourced data map, so it's not an exhaustive list of everywhere this has been done. However, there's still a notable number of municipalities who have reduced or eliminated their minimum parking requirements. So we can see this isn't a foreign concept in the United States. It's been done almost everywhere from coast to coast. And even Indianapolis eliminated parking minimums in certain areas of their city, making this idea not even new in Indiana. So I hope to be able to add a pin on Bloomington sooner rather than later. Where has this been done? Continue. These are just some municipalities I chose. Buffalo, New York eliminated parking requirements citywide in 2017. They just got rid of all of them. Minneapolis, Minnesota did the same, but they did it just this year in May of 2021. They were the most recent example until Richmond, Virginia beat them out earlier in June. So Richmond, Virginia is now the latest municipality to eliminate parking requirements. Spokane, Washington took a more targeted approach. They eliminated parking requirements for 4+ unit developments in denser areas. And in Prince George, Maryland, instead of eliminating parking minimums, they simply reduced them entirely across the city. They basically cut them in half. A study in Buffalo found that developments after the passage of the repeal of parking minimums, those developments incorporated on average 53% less parking than was required under the minimums, with several developments requiring incorporating no parking at all. So what this shows us is that the industry recommended standard, that is how many parking spaces should be included based off industry leader recommendations, is too high for some municipalities, and it's not a one-size-fit-all solution. Part of this is because of lobbying efforts of the automobile industry. There's a lot of money and time and effort that's been spent convincing urban planners and developers that you need so much parking. In reality, many municipalities awaken to the fact that not everyone uses that much parking. We can get out of this reliance on the private automobile, but it requires us to change ourselves and our habits and our old ways of thinking about planning and development. So here in this picture, you can see it's Houston, Texas. And this is an example of parking minimums just gone awry. This is Houston, Texas in the 1980s. You can just see where they've kind of been cratered out by all these surface parking lots. And that's because each of these big apartment buildings had requirements similar to Bloomington, that you needed 1 or 2 spaces per bedroom. And now you have these surface parking lots spread out all across downtown Houston, Texas. After Houston, Texas repealed many of their parking minimums, this is what happened. You can see that this is just Houston, Texas, just a couple years ago. You can see many of the surface lots and parking garages have been replaced with things such as a convention center, a park, restaurants, hotels, and other land uses that are much more beneficial to the surrounding community than parking. This is an example of a municipality that saw the errors of their ways, made substantial efforts at reform and redevelopment, and completely changed their downtown as a result. And this is what municipalities across the US should be trying to do. So our comprehensive plan, the guiding document for city development and planning that was passed in 2018, has many initiatives, goals, objectives, policies, plans incorporated for what we want to see Bloomington look like in the future. I'm going to go over a few of them right now. I'm not going to read them all in their entirety, but I bolded some sections. The city may need to guide future denser development patterns to the best locations to support a walkable and livable environment, nurture a resilient, environmentally responsible community. Bloomington residents consistently express their hopes. These hopes include reducing air contaminating pollutants by lessening our reliance on fossil fuels, reducing vehicle miles traveled by vehicles with internal combustion engines is one effective strategy for improving air quality. This is my favorite. For decades, transportation infrastructure policy and infrastructure investments have focused on supporting motorized vehicles. That focus created a legacy we are now trying to overcome. We must grow towards a compact, well-connected, integrated, and sustainable urban community. Examples include reducing dependence on private automobiles, and land dedicated to parking should be minimized by encouraging active transportation such as bicycling and walking. And then we have goals such as reduce community-wide fossil fuel consumption, reduce greenhouse gas emissions, reduce vehicle miles traveled per capita, balance environmental accessibility and equity issues in local transportation decisions, require sufficient density to support multimodal transportation and discourage urban sprawl, prioritize safety and accessibility in transportation planning and design, continue to integrate all modes into the transportation network and to prioritize bicycle, pedestrian, public transit, and other non-automotive modes, and balance vehicular circulation needs with the goal of creating walkable, bike-friendly neighborhoods. So what we can see from this is that there is strong support within the comprehensive plan for prioritizing non-automotive modes of transportation, improving walkability and pedestrian safety, limiting the land dedicated to parking, and reducing the use of fossil fuels, amongst other goals and objectives. To their credit, the city's been working on this through various street policies, for example, but reducing or eliminating parking minimums, as I'll discuss, is a missing piece of the puzzle that I believe deserves serious consideration. So the cost of parking minimums, they hinder infill development by requiring space-consuming parking in areas where dense development may be sorely needed. So annexation versus infill development, whether we take up more land as a city or use the land we have most efficiently. While it is likely that annexation will occur, we should still be looking at how to fill our land as densely as we can to prevent urban sprawl and for environmental reasons. It raises the cost of development, which raises the cost of rent, impacts the affordability of housing units, and raises the price of goods sold at local businesses. Parking is not free. It costs $5,000 to build an average parking space, $25,000 for an above ground garage space, $35,000 for an underground garage space. Typical renters pay $142 a month for parking, even if it's built into their rent, and 17% of a unit's rent on average can be attributed to parking costs, and that's according to the American Planning Association. It inherently encourages people to use vehicles to go from place to place as opposed to walking, biking, or using public transit. Vehicle use around town directly contributes to worsening air quality in municipalities. And it undermines us in our goal to create a walkable city center and neighborhoods by encouraging vehicle use and dependency. And this is another example of a parking crater, this time in Newport, Connecticut. Another example of what we want to avoid happening in Bloomington as we densify. The benefits to lowering parking minimums. It eliminates or limits a mandate. It gives developers more freedom to propose developments in areas limited by space, accessibility, or connectivity. This makes it easier to build more housing in Bloomington, for example. Developers seeking to build close to downtown or on campus or in village centers will be given more freedom to develop walkable, accessible buildings with limited or no parking provided. It lowers the cost of development, which has resulted in lower rent in other municipalities. And it also assists in the goal of decoupling parking from rent, which punishes those who do not drive while benefiting those who do. It can encourage park and walk miles of transportation, lessening demand for on-street parking in critical areas, while simultaneously lessening traffic and making those same areas more pedestrian friendly. It decreases vehicle miles traveled in the city, which decreases greenhouse gas emissions, improves pedestrian safety, and complies with our comprehensive plan. And a rhetorical question I want to pose to all of you is, how can we continue to encourage not using a car in Bloomington while simultaneously mandating parking spots for them in developments that may not need them? Bloomington has stated multiple times throughout their citywide plans that they want to be a pedestrian-friendly city like the one pictured here. However, we need to get away from mandating so many parking spaces if we want this to be a reality in Bloomington. We must avoid the mistakes of the past. Minimum parking requirements are antithetical to so much of what our city's comprehensive plan and other citywide reports, objectives, and goals state. When it comes to density, parking spaces take up more area than they're often worth in terms of benefits and trade-offs. This is an illustration by Seth Goodman at graphicparking.com. Your average two-bedroom apartment can be 900 square feet. As illustrated to the right, 1.5 parking spaces plus the aisle can be 490 square feet, which takes up over half the area of a two-bedroom apartment. The loss of extra housing to parking, increases rent, decreases affordable housing options, and impedes density in critical areas. And this is an example of why parking can account for 17% of an apartment's rent. And I didn't just choose this graphic out of nowhere. In Bloomington right now, in multifamily developments, that is multifamily apartment complexes, for example, 2 bedrooms requires 1.5 parking spaces. So this is exactly what Bloomington's requiring on our books right now in terms of parking. Why should we care? It's our purpose to achieve and maintain such levels of environmental quality as will protect human health and safety, and to promote the economic and social development of Bloomington. And our powers and duties include to prepare and develop a comprehensive plan or plans for the prevention, abatement, and control of pollution in Bloomington, and to advise the city of Bloomington on various policies. We also have to make appropriate inquiry into and give constructive consideration to operations and policies of all departments and governmental branches of the city of Bloomington, considering their adherence to a commitment for environmental quality and the conservation of natural resources. And then we prepare and reports and recommendations to the mayor, common council, and planning commission as needed. So this pretty squarely falls in the realm of what would be considered the Environmental Commission's purpose and powers. It's my goal to work with the rest of you to craft a policy and resolution to make Bloomington a better place via parking policy changes. So the Environmental Commission could pass that resolution to remove parking minimum requirements for new residential developments. We will then send that to the council, the administration, and the president of the Plan Commission. And the goal will be to have the EC be one of the, in this current times, 4 commissions championing this policy proposal through the council, Plan Commission, and administration. Within our own membership, we would speak at various meetings on this topic. And then the EC could compile a fact sheet if they wanted to on the environmental impacts of parking and vehicle usage in Bloomington for distribution to the public and members of the Common Council and Plan Commission. The end goal being, of course, to create a policy that benefits Bloomington, improves pedestrian safety, improves environmental quality, improves housing affordability, and lessens our reliance on the private automobile. I want to clarify because I can tell already that some people are going to comment on the fact that they think this will negatively impact the elderly or the disabled or those with children. This would not be forcing people to provide less parking. This would be, so you know how you go to a development in Bloomington and only half their parking spaces are filled? I can guarantee you that many of those developers do not want to build as much parking as they currently have. This would enable developers who are in ideal locations, close to public transit, close to downtown, close to campus, to provide less parking because they know people are going to use it less. It will not impact commercial developments. It will not impact downtown street parking. It will not impact residential parking permits. All this will do is give developers more freedom to actually use as much as they need. It will not require them any longer to provide more than they need. That's the baseline. So with that being said, I'll open it to any comments, questions, or concerns. I will stop sharing my screen and we'll continue the meeting from here. So let me just get out of here. How do I stop sharing my screen? There we go. Are there any comments or questions or concerns for me?
Just to clarify, this would not apply to commercial and industrial developments?
Correct. So commercial and industrial developments currently do not have parking minimums. They can provide no parking if they want to. What they have is parking maximums. And the logic behind that is commercial developments have a vested interest in providing as much parking as they can because they want to have as many customers as they can in their building at any given point in time. Whereas with residential developments have a vested interest in only providing as much parking as they need for the people living in that development. So that's why there's parking minimums for residential developments, but not parking minimums for commercial or industrial. Dave?
It may have been at the tree commission. It was at some meeting. I actually have two things to say. It might have been at the tree commission that Damia happened to mention to me that she thought the problem with this is that it would just put the burden of parking on the city, because people do have cars and they need to park them somewhere. And if they aren't built for where people are living, they'll have to park somewhere. It seems to me that to take that, the way I think about it, and what you want to do would be helpful in the long run to reduce the number of cars needed and so on. But in the short run, it's going to really put problems on the city. That's how it seems to me. The second thing is, I look at this, the way you've written it with all these whereases, and it seems very fussy to me. It makes me not want to read it at all. And I'd like to see it rewritten without all those whereases, but just another point. I'm done.
Okay. I'll just respond to the first point first, in that there's always the potential for any parking change to impact city parking in regards to street parking and residential permits. Currently, the city already has residential permit programs for residential developments. This may require tweaking to those programs. However, I generally find that developers won't provide less parking than they know they need to provide. So if a developer is building a complex close to downtown or close to campus or close to a major transportation hub, and they think they can provide less parking, tenants signing for those spaces will know that they won't have a parking space available to them. And it's unlikely that someone who has a car who will need to store it would voluntarily sign a lease that doesn't provide any parking. I think this would give people like me who don't drive in Bloomington, more options of places to live where we don't, because I have in my complex right now, I have 3 parking spots allocated to my apartment, and I don't use any of them. So I think that if you look at developments across Bloomington, we're not saying we need to provide less parking than there are cars. We're saying that right now we're providing more parking spaces than there are cars in Bloomington. And that there's no need to spend that much land on parking when we could be densifying a little bit and providing a little less parking. That's my reply to that. My reply to the whereas, I would just like to explain why it's in the form of resolution, not a memo, is because other commissions are working on this as well. Currently, the Parking Commission is working on it. The Traffic Commission is working on it. And I anticipate the Bicycle and Pedestrian Safety Commission will uptake it currently in a short amount of time. Their standard way of contacting the city and advocating on issues is through that resolution format. So they do the whereas clauses, they do the be it now resolved, which is why I did that format. If the commission feels they want to do a memo instead, we could do that. I just wanted to keep us in line with what other commissions were working on, since they're currently working on the same issue.
Makes sense.
Have you explored yet with the council how this would be received?
So I've talked to some members of the council about this, specifically Matt Flaherty. When he came to our meeting a couple months ago, he had mentioned he wanted to work on parking policy, and he thought the Environmental Commission could be involved in that as well. This is one step that I think that we could undertake, and I have reached out to council. I haven't been able to meet with them personally. I want to meet with them in person to discuss this policy further. I haven't discussed it. I have discussed it with planning staff. Planning staff gave me a positive feeling about it. They told me that they were in favor of the idea of reducing or eliminating parking minimums, but they told me that their only concern would be some neighborhood associations might take concern with it for the same reasons Damia raised, which is they fear that more complexes would push student parking onto the neighborhoods, which I think can be addressed, as I said earlier, with changes to the parking policy that the city currently has in place for those neighborhoods. But yeah, the planning staff gave me a positive recommendation. I've talked in the past with Councilmember Flaherty about this. He seems to be in favor. I want to reach out to council members, all of them, but specifically Isabel Piedmont Smith, Kate Rosenberger, and Jim Sims about this issue as well. And I anticipate doing that over the next month or two. Council is on vacation in July, so it will be hard to get a hold of them. But I anticipate in August, I'll be able to meet with them more thoroughly as people return from vacations. Ben?
I think it would be useful to actually find out, to do like a study or something to find out exactly how many spaces aren't being used. I think that would be very convincing, or more convincing to the council if you actually have that data in front of you. And also, I'm curious about in these other cities, if there has been enough time that has gone by to see if there has been like a decrease in admissions as well. Would be interesting to see.
Good point.
The decrease on emissions, I don't have an answer for. I'll look more into that. I have found studies on communities that have done this, but they primarily focus on the actual impacts on how much parking is decreased, not the environmental implications. Their general conclusion, though, is that as the number of parking spaces you have dedicated parking go down, the better your environment tends to be, because you tend to have either less people driving or you have more land dedicated to other uses that is more efficient and more sustainable than parking spaces are. In terms of collecting data on how many spaces aren't used, I do know a member of the community, his name's Greg Alexander. He comments a lot at community meetings. When they were debating parking garages, he went around to all the parking garages and found that they all had vacancy levels that were pretty high during peak hours downtown. So I imagine we could do the same for large residential developments around town. Go and see, you know, at 8 a.m., noon, and 8 p.m., how full they are and how many are used. I'm always looking for volunteers who are interested in this type of work to help me, because as I said before, I don't drive, so it's hard for me to drive across town to a apartment complex 3 times a day to collect that data. But I can tell you from my apartment complex, there's a couple hundred spaces, and at any point of time, only half of them are used.
I have a question.
Yes.
You mentioned as far as emissions, but one of the criteria that might be more easier to document would be if you had looked at a similar city as Bloomington that had implemented what you're suggesting. Has there been a change in the use of public transportation? Would, let's say, the equivalent of Bloomington Transit noticed a change? I realize with COVID, everything right now is pretty, well, for the last year is probably just noise. But if you had a community that, say, did this 10 years ago, could they see a change in the use of public transportation, which would be riders? And I'm sure that Bloomington Transit tracks how many people are using their services.
Yeah, I am actually looking at, I'm collecting data currently on Champaign, Illinois. They've eliminated parking minimum citywide 3 or 4 years ago, and they have a pretty robust public transportation system now. So I want to go back a couple years. I want to see how robust it was back then, and then compare, because they may have made investments in public transit, seeing an increased ridership. So I want to get that data from them, and that's on my to-do list as well. But Champaign, Illinois is the main one I'm looking at to compare to Bloomington, because they are a college town, similar size, similar major employers. In fact, in Champaign, when they proposed eliminating parking minimums, they didn't have any opposition from the public. They didn't have any opposition from the Chamber of Commerce. What they had opposition from was the University of Illinois. And the University of Illinois opposed it. They said in a meeting, their director of real estate came and said, the reason we're opposed to this is because the university planned on buying these parking lots and redeveloping them into academic buildings. And now that you are making those parking lots able to be redeveloped into buildings and apartments and more additional uses, we can't afford to buy them anymore. The Champaign, Illinois, the only ones who wanted to keep that policy were those who stood to benefit financially from it, which I think is pretty telling.
Well, as a University of Illinois alumni, going back half a century, they were very good then. And when I visited more in recent times, they do have a very robust both university as well as the city urban public transportation system. I was very impressed with it when last time I visited.
Yes, very impressive. I would open up to more questions, but we're reaching the end of time. I have a lot of this. If anyone has any further questions or comments or concerns or amendments to the resolution I sent, write it out via email and send it to me, and we'll discuss it further via email. Like I told Dadamia, I anticipate this being a multi-month long amending process before we even reach a vote on it. So I'm not asking for immediate action, but I do ask that if you have any thoughts or concerns or comments, that you do send them to me via email before our next meeting so that I have time to compile responses and data for you. Anything final before we move on to our next order of new business? Seeing none, excuse me, we'll move on to new business, which is our resolution regarding our electronic meeting policy. Linda, do you want to discuss this one?
Sure. The state rules about virtual meeting have changed now that we're not in the same emergency level we used to be in. And so we will, starting July 1st, we will be allowed to go back to having in-person meetings. However, the city wants to keep the Zoom meetings available. So in order to change the rules about meetings, we have to have a resolution. And we have to pass this. So what you have in the back of attached to your minutes is a memorandum that describes what I just said. And and then there is the resolution. And yeah, I'm sorry, Dave, there's a lot of whereases in here. But in a nutshell, it lays out the rules, which are citywide. Our attorneys wrote this, but it sets out the rules for having Zoom meetings, and that includes like only half the members can do that at a time, and no member can do it all the time, etc. And then and like any resolution, it's got a lot of verbiage in there, multiple times. But basically, the EC has to adopt this by July 1st. And so what we need, tonight, I'm hoping you will vote in favor of this. And then if we read it and discuss it afterwards, it can be changed. But the deadline is July 1st. And, I'm sorry there wasn't more time. I frantically spent most of one whole day doing this because it was so last minute. But in a nutshell, that's where we stand on this. Sam, you had a question?
Yeah, just a quick question. I read the document, and it was about the amount of commission members who could be present electronically. Is that out of the amount of members who are present, or is that amount of the total members of the commission? So like, let's say 3 people didn't make it to that meeting. You know what I mean?
Well, that's a good question. It just says the percent of members. It probably means total members.
Okay.
I can ask that question to our lawyers and make sure that my interpretation is right, but I think that that would be total members.
It's not a big deal to me. I was just curious.
So hopefully somebody will make a motion to just vote on this bad boy. And if you want to discuss it further next month, it can be changed.
So move.
Second.
On the floor, we have a second. We'll go through the roll. Motion to approve resolution electronic meeting. All right, Sam,
Aye.
Matt,
Yes.
Don,
Yes.
Daniel,
Yes.
I vote yes. Mike,
Yes.
Dave,
Yes. So where did you say this was written up? I was just looking for it and not finding it.
The minutes that not the minutes, the agenda that I sent you.
The first agenda or the second one? I mean, are there two?
No, the second one, the one I sent you the most recently.
I'm not sure I have that. Okay.
I
Anyway,
just
I
commented
vote
on
yes.
it yesterday.
When you find it, scroll to the end.
Okay. Anyway, I vote yes.
perfect. So it passes 7-0. Linda, if you could send me a PDF copy of that resolution, I will sign it and send it back to you.
Okay.
And then you can send it on to, I assume, City Legal or Scott, whoever needs it. Anything further on the electronic meeting policy resolution? Seeing none, we'll move on to our next order of business. This one's a short one. Thank you, Linda. I just wanted to open this discussion briefly. I had a member of the public reach out to me, and she wanted to know if the Environmental Commission had ever given recommendations to the administration and city council on budgetary issues. And what she meant by that is have we ever advocated for specific appropriations for things like updating our buses to be hybrids or electric vehicles, or increasing the budget for parks so that they can plant more native species, or more grant systems for homeowners to do things like upgrade their properties to make them more energy efficient. She asked me if we'd ever done this and if we'd ever consider doing it, especially for the American Rescue Plan funds that were discussed earlier, the $22 million the city will be receiving, whether or not the Environmental Commission had put any thought into advocating for specific use for those funds. I said I would bring it up to the commission because I think it should be up to the commission at large whether or not this is something we want to take time on or focus on. It could be as simple as writing a general recommendation where we say, we encourage the administration to appropriate more funds to environmental causes and then list a few, or we can get more specific into it, or we could do it not at all. It's just something I told a member of the public that I would raise with you all at this meeting. So if anyone has any thoughts on that, we can discuss it a bit further now. We have about 15 minutes left in this meeting, and this is our last item of business. So if anyone has anything to say, I encourage you to do so. I'm seeing no thoughts. Okay, I'll take Linda.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly wouldn't hurt. I know that I personally had an idea, and I never submitted it since I'm an employee. But the administration reached out to the community asking for ideas on how this recovery money could be used. And the first thing that popped into my head was, taking what would wind up being a small chunk of it and getting rid of the Bradford pears on the B line and replacing them with something else, because I think makes such a bad statement. But there's tons of other things like the examples that you gave, that your friend gave. So there would be no real reason not to, I think, since it would just be a suggestion to the administration on how to spend that money. It has nothing to do with our regular budget.
Correct.
Yes. Okay.
Well, she also said we could also make recommendations on the regular operating budget of the city if we wanted to, because other commissions have made avocations. She said in the past, I didn't get any specifics, but she said other commissions that she's been working with in the past have made recommendations, especially, for example, I think this one, the Commission for the Arts generally makes a recommendation that more money be allotted towards arts funding. I don't see why the Environmental Commission couldn't do the same. But again, the main constraint on this would be time, as the budget process generally starts in August. Now, we wouldn't have to make specific monetary recommendations. Like, I'm not saying we make recommendations like 1.67 million go here and then 2.38 million goes here, just that we advocate for general policy goals that are environmentally focused, that would be aided by increased funding. On?
One of the things that don't remember if it was Alex or Matt brought up about the use of the funds, some of the funds for specifically, as an example, one thing that's dear to my heart is weatherization of homes, for bang for the buck, long-lasting benefits as far as reducing energy use, whether it's green energy or fossil fuel, is making our built environment more efficient. It's something that has been a sore spot with my reading of our Sustainability Commission plan, was that it's largely talking about transportation and very little meat in towards the actual biggest user of energy is our built environment. So, and sort of some discussion I had, email discussions with Alex following that, it is something I really think that as an example, we really need to encourage. And I agree with what you just said about I don't want to get it. I would not want to get into saying we need to spend X million dollars, or but that we set out a list of things, areas where we feel investment by the city in our local, in our community, that will reduce emissions, support more affordable housing, and addressing stormwater issues, which are now close to many people's hearts from last week. But we can make a list and say, these are things that we as a commission feel strongly about, are wise investments that not only contribute to the community, but contribute to the national and global necessity.
So my thought was we would do this similarly to how we did the bucket list meeting. Everyone would send me, if they have any ideas on areas the city could increase funding in to improve our environment, send them to me, and then I would compile them into a list that I would send out. Everyone would vote on their top 3, top 4. And then we would send our list of priorities to the administration and say, Environmental Commission has voted. These are their top priorities that they want to see increased funding in. We encourage you to spend some portion of the American Rescue Plan Act fund on these priorities and then move forward from there. Does that sound okay with everybody?
Can I make a suggestion that you send along the whatever rules we have? I mean, I don't know if there are limitations on what we can ask for, if percentages have to be spent, different percentages on different types of things. I don't know if there are any rules attached to this.
Could
Yeah,
we?
Oh, I'm sorry.
I was just wondering if we could approach Matt or somebody from council that would be familiar with that.
Or the controller.
Yeah.
And maybe there's none, and maybe it's a moot point because, you know, it's just a recommendation to spend some money on something. But I just didn't know if there were any rules attached to it.
Yeah, so there's I think there's like 4 categories or so, and I'll reach out to the controller and the city for more information specifically. But they're pretty broad. So one category is infrastructure, one is assistance, so assistance to governments, to businesses, to industry, to individuals, to households. There's focusing on housing insecurity, jobs, economic recovery. So they're pretty broad. Infrastructure, I'd imagine, could be functionally almost anything. And the mayor himself said that his infrastructure policy for funding would be pretty broad. So I wouldn't imagine that it would exclude something like public transit or redeveloping our trails in a more efficient and sustainable manner. But I'll reach out to the controller and get an email from him, and then if necessary, have him come to our next meeting to discuss it further.
Would it be worthwhile to talk to Alex?
Alex
Crawley.
Oh, Alex Crawley. It could be, yes. I'll reach out to, here's what I'll do is I'll reach out to the controller, and I will ask him if there's anyone else he thinks we should loop in, because if I don't know who's responsible at the city for this fund. I don't know if it's the responsibility of one department head or if it's split up amongst department heads or how it goes with that. But I'll find out who the best person is, and I imagine it probably will be Alex.
And I was thinking judging by the Sustainability Commission meeting, that Matt would be another likely worthwhile person to talk to.
Yep. I'll reach out to him as well.
Matt has his hand up.
Thank you, Dave. Would it be in our best interest to put out kind of a broad statement, just saying we would like this to be, used on environmental issues? That's something you could draft up short and easy, and we could agree on. And then as time passes, we could, maybe propose specific processes or projects. But I would be in support, and I don't see how it would be counter to our job as an advisory board to just generally promote some of the spending. Don't overlook environmental issues type of memo.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I don't see there any harm being in providing a more broad memo that just advocates for general environmental investment. I was seeing this as an additional opportunity for the commission to explicitly promote their priorities to the administration. So, if 10 out of 12 of our members say we really want to see investment in infrastructure, I think in infrastructure involving public transit, for example, I see that as a very strong statement that we should pass along to the administration. I think this is something we could get done before July, for our July meeting. And then we would vote on the letter at the July meeting, in my mind, and then it would be ready before the council starts to meet in August for their budgetary discussions.
Okay. The main reason that crossed my mind was you mentioning how time sensitive it was. This way we could have a statement out there and then can specifics whenever we've formulated that. But gotcha.
Yeah, we have about a month to 2 months because the council is adjourned for all of July and won't re-adjourn usually until mid-August for budgets. So we do have a bit of time, and I think it's enough time to draft the memo and vote on a list of priorities. But thank you, Matt. That is, if we reach a time crunch, that is something we will do or consider. Anything further on the budgetary discussion? If not, I will, in my email that I'll send out to you all, I will solicit recommendations for various spending priorities. And then I will get a recommendation from, or an advisement from the controller. And then we'll determine which of those priorities we vote on are actually feasible under the ARPA. I keep trying to say AARP. So seeing no further discussion on this topic, we'll move along to commissioner announcements. Are there any announcements commissioners wish to give before we adjourn? Dave.
And remember, we've got 3 minutes before we turn into pumpkins.
Oh, yeah, well, I've started doing something the last couple of weeks, and I don't know why it hasn't occurred to me in the past, except that it's just getting hotter and hotter. In the morning, once it gets up to about 60 or 65, I go around the house. This probably applies to people with bigger places and not small apartments, but I go around the house and open up a whole bunch of windows. And then I leave them open until it gets to 77, which is where we keep our thermostat for the air conditioner. And then I close the windows. And it's made a big difference in how much after that the air conditioner needs to stay on or get on, because the house is already very cool. So try opening windows. It's a good way to save some electricity.
I'm just in shock you keep your thermostat at 77 degrees. I'm a big baby. I require lots of air conditioning. It's my one shame as an environmentalist is I love air conditioning.
Well, actually, my wife is down at her farm in Kentucky right now for 4 days, and while she's gone, I keep it at 80. But anyway.
Any further announcements from commissioners?
I just wanted to share because I'm excited that I've been selected as one of the people for the stormwater grants. So I'm excited to see how that goes in the coming weeks and months.
Congratulations. Any further announcements? Well, my only announcement is I am now officially a grad student and it is officially kicking my butt. So with that being said, I will accept a motion to adjourn so I can go do homework. All right. Excellent. We are adjourned at exactly 8 p.m. Thank you all. Have a great rest of your night.